1 year on in the Ukraine crisis, who would have known that the world would catalyze together so that ultimately we can report that the Ukrainian people are winning?
Коли почали бомбардувати Дніпро, я зрозуміла, що це вже дуже близько, це раз. І я зрозуміла, що я просто не виживу. Або я помру від того, що в мене немає ліків, або просто впаде бомба, і або так, або так.
Some things in life are just important that we know as people. You don't help them because it's profitable. You help them because it defines our humanity.
Przybyły do Polski miliony uchodźców. My nie mieliśmy chwili zastanowienia, wiedzieliśmy, że chcemy tym osobom pomóc. Tak mocno, jak to jest tylko możliwe.
Kiedy dowiedzieliśmy się, że jest taki program, kiedy zobaczyliśmy, jak jest transparentny, to dało nam taką gwarancję, że pieniądze naszej organizacji będą wykorzystane w sposób właściwy, a co najważniejsze, pomogą w zapewnieniu środków medycznych.
100% środków, które przekazują nam darczyńcy, trafia do beneficjentów, a niewykorzystane przez beneficjentów środki wracają do puli programu i mogą służyć kolejnym osobom.
The magnitude of this program is incredibly important. It provides access to medications and other types of life-saving drugs that citizens normally wouldn't be able to have or afford or have access to.
300 000 osób otrzymało wsparcie programu, z czego 1/4 stanowią dzieci.
Akcja pomocowa dla Ukrainy przerasta wyobraźnię wszystkich ludzi. I tych, którzy się zajmują zawodowo pomocą, i tych, którzy to obserwują.
To, czego dokonał Pelion razem z partnerami z oceanu, z Direct Relief, pokazuje, że udało nam się zrobić coś niesamowitego, coś, o czym mówił cały świat.
All we in the US government can say at this moment is thank you to Pelion, to Help for Ukraine, to the people of Poland for rising to this calling, for rising to this call to action and helping like never before. With that, dziękuję bardzo.
Witamy Państwa bardzo serdecznie. Rozpoczęliśmy
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We started with a video material about an incredible project that we're going to discuss in the first part of our panel. But before we go any further, let me introduce our guests. Let me do that from the end. Katarzyna Przybyś-Makuch from Pelion. Magda, Gronert, Stowarzyszenie WIOSNA. Okay, sorry. Michał, Mikołajczyk, Polish Red Cross, and Dobrosława, Gogłoza, Pomagam.pl. You've seen video material showing incredible help of business and help in collaboration with NGOs, humanitarian aid to migrants, to refugees from Ukraine. And this is the title of our panel, Together to the Rescue, Business and NGOs to the Aid of the Victims of Humanitarian Crises. Now, let me first ask Katarzyna of Pelion, how do you do the project? How do you develop it in the heads of business people? It wasn't anything that could have been planned because, let's say, 3 years ago, nobody thought anything like that. It's a mature continent could have happened. But I believe that this project is an example of wonderful cooperation between business and NGOs. It's also a pattern on which to model future solutions in humanitarian crises that grow geometrically, it's of the essence is time to react appropriately and react in the right way. We started the project within 3 weeks. We came to the conclusion, yes, it is necessary to help. Were the first and the time when the first beneficiaries went to the pharmacies to purchase medications. It was elderly people or mothers with little children who needed assistance. Of course, this project has two dimensions. First of all, it wouldn't have been possible without cooperation between business and NGOs. So Direct Relief and Polish Red Cross were indeed very substantial, and so we were able to release 400,000 codes and 76 million to finance medications. The assistance was organized very effectively. Business provided what it could, infrastructure, technology, solutions, and on the other hand, we had communication, we had a good knowledge of the needs of beneficiaries, and that's why in this tandem we were able to efficiently bring help to the needed. So more than 300,000 or 400,000 people who obtained support. And that's also important. As you know, at the very beginning of the war in Ukraine, more than 1 million Ukrainians came to Poland. Right now, there are 1,300,000 Ukrainians in Germany, but a fourth of them were children, also the elderly. And it's very difficult to provide direct aid to such people. I'd like to ask Michał Mikołajczyk of the Polish Red Cross. You got involved in this project. How do you diagnose needs in such projects? How do you verify them? How do you identify them? What's the perspective of an NGO? And then what's the collaboration like between you and business, as business likes concrete figures and indicators? Let me start with a small correction. It's 1 million, but you must remember that between 7 and 8 million people, Ukrainians, went through Poland over the time. And with as many as 4 million Ukrainians at a time in Poland, and at one point in time, about 180,000 Ukrainian children joined schools in Warsaw alone. So this is the scale. Now we have dozens of thousands of volunteers across Poland. So we were not only trains and coaches with people came, but we are also present in smaller towns where those people in great need ended up. But we were also strong in our international network, because immediately representatives of International Red Cross came here. The war broke out on Thursday, and the German Red Cross people came over on Friday, next day. We had the specialists for refugee camps from Syria. We were indeed in the thoughts, and not only in the thoughts, but luckily also in the wallets and checks of people around the world. 53 countries and governments provided assistance to the Red Cross that we were able to distribute in Poland or in Ukraine. And this was an absolutely unprecedented situation. We were able to take a general perspective, 8 million people. So Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, so let's say more than that part of Poland. That's a scale of population. Those people were not grouped in refugee camps. It's not only our reaction, not only as a Red Cross, but also myself. People reacted spontaneously to counter that wave of hate and hatred and desperation. We opened up with empathy and assistance, and we stunned the world. Was it a surprise to ourselves? Did we surprise ourselves? I think so, although we know that we're very spontaneous. But so first, smallest businesses and larger businesses, then local governments, and the government reacted in this order, I would say. Business, of course. I work in a company. And I say, if you can give a certificate of social responsibility, I would say you could absolutely give such a certificate to Polish business, because everybody came and asked about assistance, how much, where we can send, how we can send, where we can send assistance, so should we help you logistically without formalities, and few people asked about communication now. And we, as a Red Cross, we're very professional in terms of the distribution of assistance. So we do everything in a very transparent and effective manner. Now, we are talking about a program that ended, but this cooperation, the standards, the fact that we know each other, the transparency, thanks to that, subsequent aid projects are coming. It's very helpful that among our volunteers and members are a lot of Ukrainians, and they, of course, affirmed that they should come here for help, and there were a lot of needs. Before the panel, we talked about large groups of people who are really helpless, hundreds of disabled, totally excluded people, people who should receive immediate pharmaceutical and medical aid. Some of them should be placed in old people's houses. Many of them will be never able to find employment. Indeed, there are a lot of humanitarian challenges. Lately, we had a flood collectively. But speaking about the Ukrainian situation, we passed that test with flying colors, everyone. Yes. You said that a few businesses ask how to communicate support. Now I'd like to ask Magda Gronert how to build relationships with the business. Do you go to business, or maybe they come to you? Do you say, okay, we have an idea for a great project, or maybe there is a special a specific action that needs to be taken. Now, how about your organization? You provide the Szlachetna Paczka or the a Noble Parcel project and the Academy of the Future, but you need to remember that it's people who are behind all of these projects, and cooperation starts with a single person. In the case of our organization, somebody who wants to prepare a parcel for the needs of a specific family, and they get other people involved. Like today, NGOs and business organizations not only have needs in terms of resources, but they need to share certain values. So there may be a lot of people willing to prepare a parcel for the needy. So from that a single parcel, we can move on to a whole strategy. We can talk a lot about financial reporting, the 2030 agenda, and so on and so forth, or ESG, but it's not only about reporting figures, it's much more than that. It's experience in managing projects. It translates into a shared goal, a good mission. It is the effect of the fact that over the past 30 years we have matured as a society. We are more equality-minded, and as society we want to define our goals ourselves and pursue them ourselves. I think that this cooperation becomes something greater because for NGOs this makes it possible to ensure constant inflow of resources. It's like a job. We can compare it to someone who works the streets, and gathers money and lives from one day to another. But another option is to be able to plan projects and social impact, and for companies it is an investment that they can translate over the years into a concrete social change in our case. Now, you mentioned the subject of the last flood, another humanitarian crisis in part of our country. Now, these humanitarian crises is something we must learn to live with, because for many years now we've seen crisis situations popping up. Sometimes we're better prepared, but sometimes we act spontaneously. Now, what is the perspective of the Pomagam.pl organization? So on your website, for example, do you solicit the help of businesses or public entities or just individuals? When we enter your website, well, you'll see there are a lot of crowdfunding for the flood victims.
Yes, most of these crowdfunding actions are launched by private individuals and supported by private individuals. There were campaigns where we were trying to engage and involve business, but the private individuals act faster. They don't need to take decisions. They can start doing something here and now. And we, as the internet website or platform, we can be approached very easily and quickly, and we saw it when the war started and also during the flooding. So you can start such crowdfunding campaign immediately. Speaking about the war in Ukraine, it was even more visible because when people had to wait for funds that would be offered by a city or by the government, these people were already here. So thanks to these private donors, we could help them immediately. But independently of where I work, I think about systemic assistance and thinking about how we can change the world. Since we have to get used to humanitarian crises and climate issues, it means that we have neglected something. So for business, it's also better if we are not, if there is no risk of war or unfavorable climate changes, when we don't know what happens, not in 2 years' time, but in a month. And that's why there are greater expectations vis-a-vis business and its involvement into providing solutions to problems, and businesses are more ready to do that, and because there are people also in companies. So this experience of NGOs and businesses, because we often hear that it's difficult to go hand in hand and to act together, NGOs and business, that it's difficult. But then when I was training my people from the organization, I was telling them, well, remember that you are writing to a person. We have some abstracts in our heads, but it boils down to talking to Anya from a department, from whatever department, who wants to do something. Well, it's lovely when business wants to do something, but they don't want to communicate it because they really want to do something good rather than PR around what they are doing. But I personally would like it very much to get rid of this thinking that anonymous help is best. Well, I know that's not what you had in mind. Of course, we don't disagree about it, but I'm really I don't like this. Well, you know, making a donation, anonymous donation, well, that the business is helping, but it's not communicating it. Well, we are social creatures, and when we say openly that we as business engage in something, we inspire other people, or that we support an NGO, that's exactly. We just inspire others to do that. Well, Poland is already a rich country. Even if we don't like the cars that we are driving or where we live, please be aware that we are successful, and this is what it looks like. And if we look at the propensity among people to support organizations, NGOs financially or through volunteering action. Well, not when there is war and not when there is flooding, but if we look at our systemic as a systemic solution. So, for example, if many people, how many people do it regularly? For example, well, we subscribe to channels, movie channels like Netflix or Max or anything else, but do we do the same about NGOs? Do we support them regularly? Usually I do it we do it when there is something big to be done, but I would like to see more involvement and engagement and subscribing to social values. Well, it's exceptional well-being, volunteering by our staff or acting on an impulse. That's lovely. But I will give you an example. The flood started in Friday, Saturday. On Thursday, we have 19 rescue teams and 11 humanitarian support groups. We did inventories for all of them so that on Saturday we could send 1,000 beds to the region of flooding. Well, we offered it to them. Why? Because we have these resources. That means that from our own resources, we recruit volunteers, paramedics, specialists. We do exercises. So the system must be well thought over. We have to have storage. We have to have warehouses, and I myself I had to buy 1,000 cookers or heaters. Well, they were not available in the market, so we need to have them in our warehouse. But of course, that all has to be well thought over, and it has to be well planned. Well, are we really left alone in the world? Do we have an administrator, a regulator? I would like to ask Katarzyna whether the time has come for business, whether when the awareness and readiness to help, to offer continuous help with the know-how, with all the backup that you offer, and also by offering funds. Rafał Brzoska, the CEO on InPost, he says that this is the responsibility of big, smaller, medium-sized companies to offer support. Are you aware already that as a result of humanitarian crises and the war, the time has come for business to get involved into social policy and in assisting others? Well, we are at quite a specific point. My company, epruf, was born of difficulties in access to drugs and to medical care. I'm not sure whether you know, but healthcare spendings represent 7% of our GDP, so we are somewhere at the end of the ranking. 5.5% are public spendings. 1/3 is paid by us, so that means our system is not performing. And we've been saying that for 15 years of our history. Of course, it was there earlier, but we've been observing it for 15 years. 1/3 of our funds are spent on drugs. These are billions for paying or subsidized drugs, or that we have to pay for fully paid drugs. So we have groups which are the most endangered with financial exclusion. We have elderly people. We are an aging society, so the problem will be growing. And these people usually suffer from 2 or 3 illnesses, and they have to take medicine regularly. There are chronic diseases. We have people suffering from rare diseases and very serious ones. for which they do not get any subsidy, and these patients are left to themselves. So this cooperation between business and NGOs is very important. Of course, we hope that the administration will flood us with funds to help all the patients, but it hasn't happened for 15 years. So I sort of doubt that it will ever happen. So a lot of energy and the motivation for me comes from our cooperation with the NGO sector. As you don't need much to launch a good initiative. There are people everywhere. It's about empathy, about listening to our needs from the point of view of business. To me, this is really a source of satisfaction. Our cooperation with NGO. We offer infrastructure, technology, people who want to get engaged and who are very much committed, and we can offer real help to these organizations by making some processes digital. So, for example, how this funding gets to the beneficiary. So our potential beneficiaries, they don't, because in most cases they don't have enough money, so they can't buy these drugs. So we just say, well, dear NGO, give a voucher with our epruf code to the pharmacy. They will buy, the patients will buy what they need, and we'll make all the settlements. So looking for such partnerships for different levels of cooperation results in helping better, faster, and offering a lot of satisfaction. Well, in a transparent way, but we need to understand the needs, because business, I have the feeling that business is sometimes afraid of working with NGOs because companies don't know what is there on the other side. But business must listen to its clients and partners, but an NGO is a partner. You need to sit at the table, listen to their needs. What can we do? How can we do? How can we adjust our business to serve other people? Because at the very end, well, when we say business, it sounds pejorative, but business is an organization and it's part of our society. Humanitarian crises which are there at each corner, they do not they impact everything and everyone. So also business. So business has to be involved, not only to accomplish their goals, but also thinking about how they can effectively fit this society, this changing society. WIOSNA Association and Szlachetna Paczka is an actor on the which doesn't use public funding. Maybe I'm wrong, but you work with private business people and you deliver large-scale projects. Is this your model that guarantees your independence also of the government and local authorities, central government, or is this the method that you have worked out for years and you stick to it? Well, I think that you have already answered the question. Yes, the truth is that we are not using funding other than private, because as a result we are independent. We don't have social programs or schemes that could apply for local or central government subsidies, but I think that we somehow we have this financial engineering which results from our long-term cooperation and partnership. We've been with our partners for 10 or 15 years, so we are building trust, and then we can become operators for financial resources, because to an organization, even if we are not the first organization that is associated with refugees from Ukraine or with the flood, we often work with smaller NGOs, and we combine these resources. We share also our experience with them. But speaking about cooperation, we don't have the feeling that we are doing something for someone. We cooperate with other organizations, with, for example, local welfare, social welfare services, where there are mostly women working. When they see us, they are very happy that we reach out to them, because they don't have enough tools to do something, while we can do it more efficiently. And of course, then we report to our partners. We are accountable vis-à-vis our partners. We are, of course, responsible for what we are doing with business. And here we have entered the subject which we discussed so hotly before we entered the room. So we, as NGOs, offering help, assistance in relations with how we feel in establishing relations with local authorities or business. Well, in the times of crisis and all these unpleasant occurrences, these NGOs are expected to offer assistance and help, but we don't feel that we are helped by or supported by the governing bodies. Well, since I represent an organization as to which you may have doubts when it comes to its sources of funding, I'd like to tell you that until 1990 we received funding from the state budget, but since 1990 we get funding. We are an NGO. We are not part of the budget, and we are expected to carry out some responsibilities that are enshrined in the Geneva Convention. So, for example, assisting in trying to find people who got lost. And there are hundreds of thousands of records, and the war even increased these numbers. But speaking of the organization, this is the problem of looking at us through the lenses of partnership. But we would like to be seen as specialists, because we don't work in, we do not have terms of office. We work on these subjects regularly. I was born in Łódź. I've been living in Warsaw for 22 years with the same wife. And the organization has been there for 40 years, while politicians and decision makers at different levels, they come and go. Once they are in the in an institution of culture, on the next term they work for state forests. But for many years, the security issues after the civil defense was dissolved was not tackled at all. But the issue of security and crisis, this is our realm. I will tell you how we proceed. For example, about civil defense. We are happy that we are part of the consultations for this act. This is a new quality, and that's very comforting. We are waiting for the new legal solutions, and in Annex 6, it doesn't say that such and such organization will get 1 million or 2, but there are mechanisms also financing mechanisms, which ensure the participation of experts from NGOs. We also should be heard when criteria are identified for decision makers, especially that the administration works in silos. Well, we have the Ministry of Labor, but of course it's sort of subordinated to the Ministry of Finance because that ministry decides upon the budget. We are working for your proposals, but we welcome especially those which do not result in shifting money within the budget. But we are not saying that to take money from the state coffers. Are we using our own funding or public funding? Why would I steal for myself? Because in the public funding there are my taxes.
Czyli opieka nad chorym.
So, for example, if a Red Cross nurse taking care of a patient at home, well, we want to provide good assistance, but let's say the government would like to offer extremely low rates to such nurses. And it's only the result is that only passionate people totally devoted to this help patients, and many of our workers are even older than the patients themselves. So indeed, that's the result of budget cuts. So now I look at business situation, NGOs, so we need to kind of work out cooperation that will be longer than just from one crisis to another, because it's very, very worrisome and tiresome, and it will eventually have negative effects on efficiency. Right now there are 32 armed conflicts around the world, internal, external. So I don't think we would be able to list all of them here. Many of them are not even mentioned by the mass media, and all of them concern us to smaller or larger degree. All of them affect us to some degree, because just members of a family of man of 8 billion people. But we would like to work with the local governments, with the central government. We like to have serious consultations, not just typical consultations just to tick them off. Now, as we've heard, we cannot afford acting from one crisis to another. Then we need to realize that once a crisis strikes, we provide as much resources as possible, and funding and people. Once the crisis recedes or calms down, the resources dwindle, the involvement kind of decreases, and then, say, an NGO has problems, because in 1 year they can have several million zlotys to provide to the needy, and next year, for example, only 50,000 zloty. Janina Ochojska in another panel said where the humanitarian relief ends and let's say development support begins. So it's a question to Pomagam.pl. Where do you think assistance should end. It's a question for us. Okay, we are just a business, a typical business that has a social nature. Okay, so I'd like to provide you a business answer. I think we see eye to eye on most issues, but it's usually such panels are very boring when everybody agrees with everyone else. So I'd like to provide a different perspective concerning business. I believe that business can do a great job when business does what business can do best. So indeed, humanitarian aid is necessary in the beginning, but is it really true that all organizations deeply involved in the beginning need to be maintained forever? Perhaps it is not the case. Perhaps what happens in society is that business plays a more important role later on. In the beginning, we need to take care of people here and now, but in the later on, those people will need employment, housing. So I think that it's just the market that absorbed hundreds of thousands of people or millions of people. It's not that a local government opened thousands of vacancies. It's entrepreneurs that did it, not necessarily because they wanted to provide charity, but because it was profitable for them. Now, I agree that very often this negative view of business, which is often wrong, if we realize that Poland has joined the group of rich countries that has been made possible thanks to the generation of my parents who worked very hard and invested capital and created companies. And thanks to that, business can do some great job for people, not only when it helps charities and provides money to NGOs, but when it works and when it provides jobs and enables people to open their own companies. And it's my great pleasure to say that I can see a growing number of well-functioning companies established by the Ukrainians in Poland. This is how a good country develops. So, this is how democracy functions well. And what I like very much in business, and what I believe is maybe a lost chance as long as we look at business negatively, think that business is the best where it finds an effective business model, where business doesn't have to report CSRs or can have some tax breaks. But before I worked for Otwarta Klatka Association, or Open Cage Association, that worked on alternatives to meat. We can encourage people to give up meat, but without alternatives it won't be possible because it will be too difficult. So for a change to occur, we must provide options. Even if business works just for money, if does something good, why not? There's nothing wrong with working for money. So if companies are established, if people take up the risk of doing great things, then progress will occur. So thinking about system change is not only about long-term business links between business and local authorities and charities. It's sometimes only about business, and I believe that many people are eager to help others and help the world, and why not think about making money at the same time? Because it's innovativeness that is associated with business is something I bet on, and that's something I hope. Yes, I agree, because it is my profession. I deal with waste and waste disposal and segregation, but to take the risk and stop eating meat, that sounds terrifying. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that's 1 million people who have stayed in Poland after the beginning of war in Ukraine, and many of them work in Poland. They work in the private sector. This is statistics. Out of the 1 million people are professionally active. In Germany, only 23%, because we do not have a special system of support for migration policy. So in Germany, the first phase of activation is social activation, and professional activation comes later. So our example is not systemic. Now I'd like to ask Magda Gronert, you publish a report on poverty every year, and you're trying to predict changes in Poland. What challenges can you see in our country that we will need to tackle as members of NGOs, that we will need to tackle in a systemic way with the help of business and others? Yes, we are in the process of preparing this report. Of course, this year we saw Poverty Watch 2024, and the Central Statistical Office provided data of the increase in poverty and how many children are involved. Now we will tell you about stories of real people, what it means to live on 20 zlotys for half a month, and we can be excluded not only because of money, but energy or intellectually. And it is really often for no fault of the people involved. There's a difference between a person who lives well and in poverty. Sometimes it's just one installment of a loan that may precipitate an avalanche. Now, in terms of spontaneous actions, there's nothing wrong with that, obviously, just the opposite, but we as a noble parcel, or szlachetna paczka, we target our help. Now we are based in Łódź, and probably people remember masa krytyczna, critical mass. In Łódź there was a movement, cycling movement, and people got together, rode their bikes to support the transition from cars to cycling. And indeed, we need to take note of people in need who maybe our neighbors. Many of them kind of conceal their poverty, and you can actually become a volunteer. A huge host of volunteers is going to set off pretty soon. Now, you can also see with the floods, for instance, that assistance and relief is not a sprint, but rather a marathon. Now, Katarzyna, you have had a great project. I read the report. You've seen the effects. Now, what's the situation in Pelion? Do you have any ideas for future projects, systemic activities? Yes, obviously. In terms of cooperation with NGOs, we've been working with them for many years. Well, the situation with the Ukrainians was just a huge accelerator. It appeared that what we do in business was very effective in terms of relief for the needy. So we work intensively with the Polish Red Cross, but there are also many other organizations that value us as a business partner, that helps them with administrative work, and we are very happy that we run a business and we help others. One more thing I would like to mention. I said many times that we live from one crisis to another. Same thing in business. You live from one, say, failure to another. At one point, somebody says, okay, enough is enough. What can we do for us to be able to work in a long-term, stable manner? And maybe this is a good time to talk about broader cooperation between business and NGOs. Let's think about these two, about organizations being on the same side, having different competences. Most businesses are focused on their basic activity, and many other activities are outsourced. So why charities shouldn't outsource some of their activities that are not related to volunteers or beneficiaries. So business needs to open up as well, because we are going to face crises more and more often. We have a permanent problem in that Polish people cannot afford necessary medications on a daily basis. So we need to find the right products and services to be able to provide them to the population. It's at a time for businesses and NGOs to look at the processes and activities from a distance. And so what can we improve to be more effective? For example, one time we can have two humanitarian crises at the same time. Okay, we want to build a working machine, and just if need be, we can quickly organize. Okay, the time is running out, so let me wrap it up with a quotation. Now, in collaboration on the other side, the mail or the phone call, it's received by a person, as one of the panelists said. Thank you very much for your participation.
Dziś Nowy Jork, jutro Londyn. Za chwilę Paryż, Warszawa, Berlin. Na całym świecie kultura pulsuje rytmem. Wystarczy tylko włączyć dwójkę. Dwójka, Polskie Radio. Jesteś na miejscu.
Plany biznesowe powstają z marzeń. Dlatego nie ma dwóch takich samych firm. Jedni chcą działać na całym świecie. Innym cały świat mieści się w dłoni. Sukces biznesu to nie tylko jego wielkość, ale też szczęście, jakie przynosi ludziom. PKO Bank Polski.
Polskie Radio.
Jedynka.
Uwielbiam szycie w sieci. Wczoraj podszyłem się pod wnuczka, wieczorem uszyłem intrygę na apce randkowej, a dziś planuję grubymi nićmi szyte oszustwo z promocją. Tak się szyje.
Na oszustów są sposoby. Zapoznaj się z poradami ekspertów na niedajsiepodszyć.pl.
Rodzina spółek Pelion to 12 000 osób pracujących w ponad 300 spółkach w Polsce, Szwecji, Wielkiej Brytanii i na Litwie. Jesteśmy liderem w branży ochrony zdrowia. Od 1990 roku dbamy o długość i jakość życia. Pracować z nami możesz w jednym z 7 obszarów.
Kanapki z kawiorem.
Nadzwyczajna kasa.
Obrażanie dziennikarzy telewizji polskiej.
Chodzi o działania polityczne.
Przyjmowanie ofiar dla pedofilów.
Für Deutschland.
TVP Info. Włącz się na nowo.
Radość, nadzieja, życie, wyzwanie, pasja, pamięć, zaufanie, pokój, jedność. Słowa tworzą świat. Polskie Radio. Źródło wiarygodnych informacji.
It's not always easy to recognize. It may look like this, or like this. It may be a burden, but it is a responsibility that we embrace nonetheless. But if it means this for one person and this for someone else, maybe it ultimately means being there for one another. It isn't handed to us, but we know where to find it and how it feels, how it tastes, and what it sounds like when we finally have it. It means different things to different people. But for many, it means everything. And if we all fight for it, it will eventually bring us together.